Nobody will believe me if I tell them what really happened. For years, people thought I was a good wife, a quiet woman who stayed home, waited for her husband, and smiled politely at the neighbors, but the truth is much darker, and it began the day my heart grew lonely. My husband, Daniel, worked for the Ministry of Education. It was his dream job. When we married, he promised that even if work kept him busy, he would never forget me. But promises are easy when life is calm. Soon, he was traveling all the time to meetings in other cities, sometimes for weeks. Even when he was home, he spent long hours reading reports, writing plans, or taking late phone calls. I tried to understand. I told myself, he's doing something important. He's serving our country, but the house grew quieter every day. I would cook dinner and eat alone, the other chair always empty. I missed laughter, touch, and the feeling of being seen. Then one evening, I attended a government reception in Malabo. My friend worked at the ministry and insisted I come. That's when I met Baltasar Ingonga. He was the leader of the National Financial Investigation Agency, a man known for his intelligence and strictness. Everyone spoke of him with respect, some even with fear. But when he looked at me, his eyes softened. He wasn't like the others that night. He didn't boast or brag. He asked me about myself, my dreams, my family, my feelings. No one had asked me those things in years. We talked for a long time. He told me he was married too, but his wife was always busy with her own life, her own ambitions. Sometimes, he said quietly, you can share a house and still feel like a stranger. Those words struck my heart because they were exactly how I felt after that night. We began to meet often, first by accident, then by choice. We told ourselves it was harmless. Just friendship. Just comfort. But every message, every meeting, every secret smile pulled us deeper into something we both knew was wrong. One afternoon, he invited me to his office. It was quiet, everyone had gone for lunch. Papers were stacked neatly on his desk, and the sound of the air conditioner filled the silence. I remember standing near the window, looking down at the busy street below, thinking, if I cross this line, I can never go back. Then he touched my hand. Just a small touch, but it burned like fire. And that was the moment everything changed. Days turned into weeks, and our secret grew heavier. He would come to see me when he could, sometimes late at night, sometimes just for a few stolen minutes. I knew it couldn't last. I knew it would end in pain. But in those moments, I felt alive again, seen, wanted, understood. The loneliness that used to fill my heart was gone, replaced by dangerous warmth. But secrets always find their way to light. One day, Daniel came home earlier than usual. He found a letter, one I had meant to destroy, hidden inside my book. It wasn't a love letter exactly, but it was enough. Enough to make him know. Enough to break him. He didn't shout. He didn't cry. He just looked at me, quietly, with eyes full of disbelief. How long? He asked. I couldn't answer. The silence was heavier than any scream. Baltasar ended things soon after. He said his position was too risky, that people were starting to talk. He promised to take care of everything, but I knew what that meant. He was protecting himself, not me. In the end, I lost them both, the man I married and the man I betrayed him with. Now, when I walk past the ministry building or hear the name Baltasar Ingonga in the news, my chest tightens. People think I'm just another government wife, living quietly. Nobody knows what I did. Nobody knows what I lost. Sometimes I sit by the window at night, staring at the empty chair across the table, and whisper, nobody will believe me, because even I can hardly believe myself that I was capable of such love, such loneliness, and such ruin. Nobody will ever know the power his words had over me. Baltasar was not just a man, he was a force. He spoke in a deep voice that could calm storms, and when he looked at you, it was like he saw everything, your truth, your weakness, your hunger for love. He used to say to me, don't trust anyone at first. I thought it was just something men in power said, a habit from his work in the National Financial Investigation Agency. But soon, I realized it was more. He truly believed it. He said, people smile at you, but they watch you. They wait for you to fall. Promise me, don't tell anyone about us, not even your shadow. I promised. And once I promised, I became his secret. Sometimes he would hold my face between his hands and whisper, before we met, don't let anyone touch you. Don't let anyone sleep with you. I want to meet you fleshy whole, untouched by another man's desire. His words were strange but passionate. He wanted to believe that what we had was pure even though it was born from betrayal. He wanted to feel like he was the only one who truly knew me. When he kissed me, the world disappeared. It wasn't one kiss, it was many, endless, soft and fierce at the same time. He would pull me close, his breath warm against my skin, and kiss me again and again until I forgot where I was. Sometimes he would stop, look at me, and say quietly, you taste like truth. Then he would kiss me again, slower, deeper, until I felt my knees weaken. Every meeting with him was like that, a mix of danger, tenderness, and hunger. We used to meet in quiet places, sometimes in a hidden corner of his office, sometimes in a house near the sea that he said belonged to a friend. The windows, they were covered with white curtains, and when the wind blew, the curtains moved like ghosts. He would pour me wine, talk softly, and tell me about the world of secrets he lived in. He said, in my job, you learn that everyone lies. Everyone hides something. That's why I don't trust easily. Then he would touch my hair and add, but with you, I forget that. You make me want to believe. It was hard not to fall deeper each time. He had a way of making me feel like I was the only person who existed. When he looked at me, it was as if his whole world stopped. Sometimes he would just stare and say, you have no idea what you do to me. And then he would kiss me once, twice, 10 times, until I couldn't breathe, until I forgot that both of us belonged to other people. But there was another side to him. He was careful, almost fearful. He didn't like when I called him too often. He didn't like when I asked about his wife. Once, when I mentioned her name, his face hardened, and he said, don't. She's not part of this world. You and I, we are different. I didn't argue. I just nodded. Because every time he looked at me, I felt chosen. And for a woman who had felt invisible for so long, being chosen felt like breathing again. Baltasar's touch stayed with me long after he was gone. Sometimes, even now, I wake up at night and remember the way his lips moved against mine, slow and certain, like he had all the time in the world. I remember his hands strong, careful, tracing the edge of my jaw, the curve of my neck. He kissed me not like a man in love but like a man claiming something forbidden, something precious. And yet, for all his warmth, his words still haunt me most. Don't trust anyone. Don't tell anyone. Come to me fleshy, untouched. They sounded romantic at the time, but now I understand they were chains made of silk. I was free to leave, yet I never did. I stayed, trapped in the spell of his voice, his power, his kisses. Now, years later, when I walk past the sea, I sometimes whisper his name, Baltasar, in Gonga. The wind carries it away, just like he carried away my heart. He is probably still out there, still powerful, still respected. And no one knows the secret woman who once waited for his call, who believed his words, who let him steal every breath with endless kisses. But I remember every word, every warning, every kiss. Because nobody will believe me, but I still belong, in memory, to the man who told me never to trust anyone. After that night by the sea, something changed between us. Baltasar no longer spoke like a man who was unsure. He had made up his mind, and in his world, when he wanted something, he got it. He started calling me more often. Sometimes from a private number he would say, come to my office. I want to see you. And when he said it like that, soft but firm, I always went. His office was on the top floor of a tall building, quiet, cold, and serious. The first time I went there alone, I was shaking. My heart beat fast the whole way in the elevator. The walls were made of glass, and I could see the city shining below like 1,000 stars trapped on the ground. When I entered, he was sitting behind a big desk covered with papers and files. He didn't smile right away, he just looked at me in that deep way that always made my knees weak. Then, slowly, he stood up and came around the desk. He didn't speak. He just touched my arm gently, then my shoulder, and whispered, "You came." I nodded, not trusting my voice, and for a moment, there was only silence, the sound of the air conditioner, the quiet ticking of a clock. Then he took my face in his hands, just like he always did, and looked at me for a long time before kissing me. It was not a quick kiss. It was slow and full of everything we had both been holding back, weeks of messages, waiting, pretending. It was a kiss that said, "I missed you, I need you, and you belong to me," all at once. When he pulled away, he said, "You don't know how hard it is for me to wait for you. You have no idea how many times I stopped myself from calling." Then he kissed me again, and I forgot all my fears. From that day on, his office became our secret place. He would send for me when the others were gone, late afternoons when the building was nearly empty. I would sit by the window, watching the sky turn gold, and he would come to stand behind me, his hand resting lightly on my shoulder. He would whisper something about how the world outside never stopped moving, but inside that room, time stood still. At first, it felt dangerous and exciting. I told myself it was only about love, about the loneliness we both carried. But as weeks turned into months, I realized something. Baltasar was beginning to control everything. He decided when I would come, how long I would stay, what we would talk about. If I tried to leave too soon, he would hold my hand and say, "No, not yet. I'm not finished seeing you." And yet, even though I felt trapped, I didn't want to go. Every time I saw him, I forgot my guilt. The world outside, my husband, my promises, my fears all disappeared. His voice, his touch, the way he said my name, it was like a spell I couldn't break. Sometimes, after a long silence, he would whisper, "Do you know why I always want you near?" I would shake my head. He'd smile slightly and say, "Because you make me forget who I am." And I need that, but I also began to see something in his eyes, something cold behind the warmth. He liked control. He liked knowing that I would come whenever he called. He liked the power it gave him. One afternoon, I told him I couldn't keep coming. I said I needed space, time to think. He didn't get angry. He just smiled, that quiet, dangerous smile, and said, "You can try to forget me, but you'll come back. You always do." And he was right, I did come back. Again and again. Because love, when it's mixed with loneliness and fear, becomes something you can't easily escape. That office, with its tall windows and heavy silence, became the place where I lost myself and found out what it meant to be owned not by chains, but by feelings too strong to fight. Days turned into weeks, and soon, going to Baltasar's office became a secret part of my life. I told myself I was only visiting him for short moments, just to talk, but those moments always became hours. I could never truly say no to him. His coworkers began to notice me. When I walked through the hall, they looked up from their computers and smiled politely, whispering to one another. Some of them thought I was his secretary. Others, I'm sure, guessed something more. But no one dared to ask. Baltasar was too respected, too calm, too powerful for anyone to question him. He liked that people misunderstood. Sometimes, when someone entered the office while I was there, he would hand me papers and say, "Please file these, will you?" Pretending I worked for him. After the door closed, he would laugh softly and say, "They have no idea, do they?" And I would smile, but deep inside, something began to hurt. I was no one in his world, not a colleague, not a wife, not even a friend. Just his secret. Still, he had a way of making everything feel beautiful. When he spoke, his voice was soft and low. When he looked at me, the rest of the world disappeared. He told me stories about his work, his travels, the things that made him tired. And when he smiled at me, I forgot that I was hiding. But the more time we spent together, the more I saw how carefully he controlled every moment. He decided when to call me, when to let me leave, when to show me affection. I realized that, while I was falling deeper into him, he was keeping his balance, never giving all of himself. One afternoon, the sunlight came through the tall windows, painting gold lines on the floor. I was sitting in his chair while he stood by the window, silent. He looked tired, distant. "Do you ever think about us?" I asked quietly. He didn't turn. "All the time," he said. "But thinking doesn't change what we are. What are we, Balthasar?" He finally looked at me, his eyes calm but cold. "We are what no one else has to know." That answer stayed in my heart for days. I began to feel like a ghost living between two lives, one in the daylight, one in the dark. My friends noticed that I smiled less. My husband asked me if something was wrong. I lied, saying I was just tired inside. I was full of questions. Was this love? Or was I just a piece of his hidden world, something he used to escape his own loneliness? And yet, whenever he called, I still went. Because even with all the confusion, there was a strange comfort in his presence, like standing near a storm you know will hurt you, but still wanting to feel the rain. One evening, as I prepared to leave his office, he stopped me at the door. "Don't forget," he said softly, "you belong here, with me." I nodded, but as I walked out into the hallway, his words echoed in my mind. "You belong here." For the first time, I wondered if he meant with him or under him. The days with Balthasar became heavier, like a song I couldn't stop listening to even though it made me sad. Every morning I told myself I would stop seeing him, that I would end it for good, but by afternoon, I was already waiting for his call, the quiet voice saying, "Come to me." He always knew the right time to reach me: when my husband was away, when I felt lonely, when the sky turned gray and my heart felt empty. That's when the phone would ring, and when I heard his voice, everything inside me melted again. We began to meet not only in his office, but also outside, always in secret, always hiding. Sometimes it was a quiet cafe in the corner of the city, sometimes it was his car, parked by the riverside, where no one could see us. The windows were always half covered by the fog of our breath, the world outside becoming only shadows. He liked the feeling of being hidden. He would smile and say, "No one knows. That makes it ours alone." And for a long time, I believed that made it more beautiful, because it was something that belonged to only us. But secrets have a way of finding the light. It happened one late afternoon, just before the rain. Balthasar and I were sitting in his car, parked under a big tree. We had been quiet for a while, listening to the soft sound of raindrops starting on the windshield. He reached for my hand, his thumb tracing small circles on my skin. I looked at him, and he smiled, that small, dangerous smile I could never resist. He leaned closer, and before I could stop myself, our lips met. It wasn't a long kiss, just enough to make my heart beat fast, enough to make me forget the world for a few seconds. But then, from the corner of my eye, I saw movement, someone walking past the car, holding an umbrella. At first I thought it was a stranger. Then I looked again. My heart dropped. It was Clara, my best friend since childhood. She stopped. Her eyes widened, and for a moment, time froze. Then she turned and walked away quickly, her umbrella tilting in the wind. I pulled back from Balthasar. My hands were shaking. "Oh no. Balthasar, she saw us," I whispered. He didn't seem surprised. He just sighed softly and said, "Let her think what she wants. It doesn't matter." But it did matter to me. It mattered more than anything. That night, Clara called me. Her voice was calm but cold. "I saw you today," she said. I couldn't breathe. "You saw me where?" I asked, pretending not to know. "In the car," she said. "With him. You were kissing him, weren't you?" I didn't answer at first. My throat felt dry. Finally, I whispered, "Clara, it's not what you think." She laughed softly, sadly. "Then what is it, really? Tell me the truth. Are you cheating on your husband?" The word cheating hit me like a stone. I wanted to scream, to explain that it wasn't so simple, that it wasn't just betrayal, it was loneliness, confusion, need, everything mixed together. But the truth sounded ugly when spoken out loud. So I lied. No, I said quickly. You must have seen wrong. We were just talking. He's my friend, he was just comforting me. There was a long silence on the line, then she said quietly, your eyes told a different story. And she hung up. I sat on the edge of my bed for a long time, staring at the phone. My heart had not only because she had seen, but because I had lied to her, the one person who always believed in me. The next time I saw Balthasar, I told him what happened. He listened, then smiled faintly and said, people always talk. Let them. The only truth that matters is between us. But his words didn't calm me this time. Something inside me began to shift, a small voice that said, this is not love anymore. This is control. That night, I looked at myself in the mirror and didn't recognize the woman staring back. Her eyes were tired. Her heart was heavy. She looked like someone who had traded her peace for a few stolen hours in the dark. For the first time, I wondered what would happen if I stopped answering his calls. Would he let me go? Or would he come looking for me again, the way storms always return, even after the sky clears? After the night Clara saw me in the car with Balthasar, nothing felt the same. Days passed, but I could feel the silence between us growing heavier. She stopped calling me. When we met by accident in the street, she only nodded politely, her eyes sad, her smile gone. I knew she was angry, but more than that she was disappointed. One evening, while I was sitting alone at home, the phone rang. It was her name on the screen. For a moment, I wanted to ignore it. But then I thought maybe she was ready to forgive me, so I answered. Clara, I said softly. There was a long pause before she spoke. Her voice was calm, almost too calm. I couldn't stay quiet anymore, she said. He deserves to know. My heart started pounding. What do you mean? Who deserves to know? Your husband, she said. I told him everything. The room started spinning. I stood up so fast that the chair behind me fell. You what? I whispered, my throat dry. I'm sorry, she said. But I couldn't watch you destroy yourself. He needed to know the truth. Maybe now you'll stop. And before I could say anything else, she hung up. That night, my husband came home early. I could tell, from the sound of his steps, that he already knew. He didn't speak right away. He just looked at me, a long, quiet look that hurt more than any word. Finally, he said, Clara told me everything. I opened my mouth, trying to explain, to deny, but he raised his hand. Don't lie to me, he said. So I didn't. I told him everything, how it started, how lonely I was, how I didn't mean for it to go so far. He didn't shout. He didn't throw anything. He just sat down, his face pale and tired, and whispered, you broke something that we can't fix. That night, we slept in separate rooms. I heard him crying once quietly, through the walls. It broke my heart. I realized then that love doesn't only die from anger. It also dies from silence, from the space between two people who no longer trust each other. A few days later, everything became worse. My husband found out where Balthasar usually had lunch, a fancy restaurant in the city, the one with glass walls and gold lights. I begged him not to go there, but he didn't listen. That afternoon, he left the house without a word. Something in my chest told me exactly where he was going, so I followed him, not because I wanted to see them fight, but because I was afraid of what might happen. When I arrived, the restaurant was quiet, full of people in suits, waiters moving carefully between tables. And there, near the center, I saw them. Balthasar was sitting, calm as always, a glass of wine in his hand. My husband stood in front of him, fists clenched, his voice shaking. So you're the man, he said. The one who thought he could steal my wife. Balthasar didn't rise. He just looked up slowly, his eyes cold. I didn't steal her, he said softly. She came to me. The words hit like fire. My husband grabbed him by the collar, his voice breaking. You destroyed my family. Chairs fell. People gasped. Waiters hurried forward to stop them, but no one dared to touch either man. Balthasar finally stood up, his calmness still there but thinner now, like a mask about to break. He said quietly, "You should take care of your wife, not blame others for her choices." That was the moment my husband hit him. The sound echoed through the restaurant, sharp, final, terrible. Wine spilled across the table like dark blood. I ran forward, shouting, "Stop! Please, stop!" Everyone was watching. My husband's face was red with anger and pain. Balthasar's lip was bleeding, but he didn't move again. He just looked at me, and in that look was something strange. Not anger, not love, but disappointment. "Go with him," he said quietly. "Your story with me is over." We left the restaurant in silence. Outside, the sky was gray, heavy with clouds, the wind cold against my face. I tried to speak, but my husband walked ahead, not looking back. When we reached the car, he finally turned to me. "I fought him because I loved you," he said, his voice trembling. "But now I see I can't fight for someone who doesn't want to be mine anymore." Tears filled my eyes. I tried to reach for him, but he stepped back. "Go home," he said softly. "I need to think." He got into the car and drove away, leaving me standing on the sidewalk, watching his taillights disappear into the distance. That night, I sat alone by the window, looking out at the city lights. Everything felt empty: the house, my heart, my future. Balthasar hadn't called. My husband hadn't come home. For the first time in a long time, I was truly alone. And in that silence, I finally understood something. Secrets don't stay hidden forever. They always find their way out, like smoke through cracks, and when they do, they don't just destroy the people who kept them, they destroy everyone who loved them too. After the fight in the restaurant, my life began to crumble slowly, like an old wall touched by rain. For days, my husband didn't come home. His phone was off, his things were still in the house, but his presence was gone like air that had been taken away from the room. I went to work, trying to pretend everything was normal, but everyone in the office already knew. The story had spread faster than wine. Someone had seen the fight. Someone had whispered to someone else. Now, whenever I walked into the room, people looked at me differently, some with pity, some with judgment, some just curious. I wanted to disappear. One morning, as I was sorting papers at my desk, a woman entered the office. She was elegant, tall, graceful, wearing a dark blue coat and small gold earrings. At first, I didn't recognize her. Then I saw her eyes. Cold, sharp, and familiar. She was Balthasar's wife. She walked toward me slowly, like someone who had been planning that moment for a long time. The room went quiet. She stopped in front of my desk and smiled, a small, tight smile that didn't reach her eyes. "So," she said softly, "you are the one my husband chose." I opened my mouth, but no words came out. My hands were trembling. She looked around the office, then leaned closer to me. "You think you know him," she whispered, "but you don't. You were just one of his little games. And now, it's over." I wanted to tell her she was wrong, that what we had was real, that we had shared something deep, but when I looked into her eyes, I saw the truth. She wasn't here to talk. She was here to destroy me. A few days later, strange things began to happen, small, quiet things at first, like missing documents, misplaced reports, messages I didn't remember sending. Then, one morning, my boss called me into his office. He was kind but distant. He told me that some of my work had caused problems, that a few clients had complained. He said they had found emails from my account that I swore I didn't write. "I'm sorry," he said gently, "but we have to let you go." I sat there, frozen. I knew what had happened. Balthasar's wife had used her power, her connections, her clever tricks. She wanted me gone, and she had succeeded. As I packed my things, I saw her words in my mind again. "It's over." Yes, it truly was. That afternoon, I went home early. The house was silent, filled with the smell of rain from the open window. My husband's suitcase was gone. On the kitchen table, there was a note. It wasn't long, only a few lines written in his familiar handwriting. I tried to forgive you, but every time I look at you, I see the lie. I need peace, and I can't find it here. Don't look for me. Maybe one day we'll both be free. I read it again and again until the words blurred with my tears. He had really left everything I had built. My marriage, my work, my friendships had all fallen apart, and all that was left was silence. For days, I stayed inside. I didn't answer calls. I didn't eat much. Sometimes I stared out the window for hours, watching people walk by, wondering if they could see how broken I was. At night, I dreamed of Balthasar. In my dreams, he would stand by the sea, looking at me with the same calm eyes, saying nothing. When I woke up, the image stayed: his face, his voice, his control, and I realized something painful. Even though everything had ended, a part of me was still chained to him. One evening, weeks later, I decided to go out. I needed air. I walked through the city streets, past cafes and shops, until I reached the building where his office used to be. The lights were still on inside. For a long moment, I stood there, staring up at the window, the same window where so much of my secret life had happened. Then, suddenly, the door opened, and he came out. Balthasar. He looked older, tired. For a second, our eyes met. Neither of us spoke. Finally, he walked toward me and stopped just a few steps away. You shouldn't be here, he said quietly. I know, I whispered. I just wanted to see you once more. He sighed, looking down at the ground. My wife knows everything, he said. She took care of it in her own way. You shouldn't blame her. She's protecting what's hers. I laughed bitterly. She destroyed my life. He looked up at me, sadness in his eyes. No, he said softly. You destroyed it yourself. She only finished what you started. Those words cut deep, but they were true. For the first time, I saw him clearly, not as the man I loved, not as the one who had saved me from loneliness, but as the man who had used my weakness to feel powerful. I realized then that what I had called love was really dependence. I had loved him so much that I forgot myself. And in forgetting myself, I lost everything. We stood there in silence for a while. Then he said, go home. Start again. Forget me. He walked away without looking back, his figure disappearing into the night. I stood there alone, the cold wind on my face, and whispered to no one, I will. That night, I went home and opened the windows wide. The air smelled of rain again, fresh and clean. I sat down and began to write, not to him, not to my husband, but to myself. I wrote about everything I had done, everything I had lost, and everything I still wanted to become. It was the beginning of something new, small, uncertain, but mine. Because sometimes, losing everything is the only way to find yourself again.